Buenos días con todos, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a la conferencia de Crime in Classical Greece and Comparable Asian and disculpen por eso. Eh, bueno, buenos días con todos, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a la conferencia Crime in Classical Greece and Comparable Asian and Modern Social Cultural Settings, organizado por la carrera de Arqueología en conjunto con el Club de Arqueología Politécnico y la Facultad de Ciencias Sociales Humanísticas de la ESPOL. Mi nombre es Ariana Ordóñez, soy estudiante de la carrera de Arqueología y actual presidenta del club. Y hoy seré una de las moderadoras en este evento. El día de hoy contamos con la presencia de nuestra invitada Carina Alexandra de la Universidad de Creta y Paula Torres Peña, docente de la carrera de Arqueología y tutora del club, que también hará de moderadora. Carina Alexandra cursa actualmente un máster en la Facultad de Medicina de la Universidad de Creta y un máster en Arqueología Clásica en la Universidad de Sapienza de Roma. Obtuvo, obtuvo una doble licenciatura en Arqueología y Relaciones Internacionales en la Universidad de California, en Davis. Anteriormente también obtuvo una certificación por la Universidad de Oxford. Ha trabajado en proyectos como antropóloga cultural, analista de medios de comunicación y arqueóloga. Últimamente también estudia los restos humanos en Gortina, Grecia. For our English-speaking attendees, Carina Alexandra is currently pursuing a master's degree at the University of Crete Medical School and a master at Sapienza University of Rome in classical archaeology. She obtained her bachelor's degree at University of California at Davis, both in archaeology and international relations. Previously, she also received an undergraduate certification from the University of Oxford. She has worked in projects as cultural anthropologist, media analyst, and archaeologist. Lately, she also studied human remains from Gortina, Greece. Este evento tiene como finalidad dar a conocer cómo se desarrollan investigaciones en el área de la etnoarqueología. En este caso particular, la investigación etnoarqueológica involucrará métodos e información de distintas disciplinas, como la arqueología clásica, antropología social criminal, ecología del comportamiento humano y economía política. Además, dará a conocer cómo se realizan estas investigaciones en Grecia, así como información relacionada a varias épocas. The purpose of this event is to show how research is in the area of ethnoarchaeology is developed. In this particular case, ethnoarchaeological research will involve methods and information from different disciplines, such as classical archaeology, anthropology, criminal sociology, human behavior ecology, and political economy. In addition, we will provide insight into how such research is conducted in Greece, as well as the information related to various épocas. Les invitamos a dejar preguntas, comentarios en la sección de chat de transmisión, de las cuales dejaremos y comentaremos al final de la charla. Ahora vamos a dar paso a nuestra invitada, la arqueóloga Alexandra. Welcome, Karina. How are you?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm well. So, shall we begin the lecture? So this is going to be an introduction to counterfeiting, to all kinds of crime, not just counterfeiting in ancient times, different forms of organized crime. And we are going to compare past and present ethnoarchaeological methods and see if we can come to some kind of conclusion with this. Fantasy worlds, as we see them in television, as we read them in books, they often feature this idea of a thieves' guild, and that's an organized group of criminals. And scholars, for some reason, they overlook the underworld because they think that it's not useful to study. They think that because it didn't contribute to a country's GDP, that it won't give us any insight into human nature. And this leads to so many unexplored territories within classical studies. Fortunately for us, crime is a problem in the modern day, so the International Classification of Crime for Statistical Purposes is a development by the United Nations, and they've started studying it. And I've started comparing their studies with ancient literature, and I've tried to come to some form of conclusion using different subjects. Now, their definition is that harm and wrongfulness can be linked to crime, but they can't fully define it. So crimes are defined by each country's laws, and crime can show economic and cultural patterns. Crime can show insights into inequality, into poverty, into discrimination, into social exclusion. And this study is going to focus on several cities in ancient Greece. The paper itself, which I will be able to send to your professor after it's been fully published. It's currently in peer review, and you can request it at any point. After that, the paper itself studies several cities in ancient Greece. We don't have time for that in today's lecture, but I will be giving you some case studies. And so by looking at individuals, their supporters, and the legal and social limits that define them, we can definitely change our understanding of morality, of culture, and of society itself. So counterfeiting in the EU, you'll forgive my PowerPoint before I share it. Finally, I will make sure that it's legible, that you can read it easily. I had to give it a few last-minute updates. So when it comes to counterfeiting in the EU, we have a 2013 study by the European Parliament that explains the impacts of organized crime, including counterfeiting. And it targets the EU, but it looks at other places in the world as well. And counterfeiting involves the deceptive imitation of products, violating intellectual property rights, and posing significant threats to society. And this study is important because it categorized counterfeit products into different types: those designed to deceive consumers, those designed to openly sell these counterfeit goods on open air, and mixed category products which were intended to deceive casual consumers and be sold on the open air. So the significance of this is the person doing this counterfeiting activity for themselves, or is this person doing this counterfeiting activity to make a profit off of someone else's lack of knowledge? And there's a huge economic impact in this. And counterfeiting extends to all forms of life. And the European Central Bank recently withdrew 317,000 euro banknotes in one semester alone. And why this is important, why we're looking at the modern day, is because what the modern day has, with all of our security, with all of our knowledge, it was obviously there in the past as well. And it can be seen not necessarily as a one-to-one level, but it can give us something to start our research on. And so there's so much deception, there's so much detection and adaptation going on. The emergence of coinage in ancient Greece is what starts this all. People start minting money, and to mint is to produce, right? And so they start minting these silver coins. They start looking for this. And Greek coins were generally of very high quality, but counterfeiting quickly became lucrative. It's this adaptational process. They see these real coins are growing on, and they want and need to survive. So it's a behavioral response. It's a behavioral approach. And they start changing, they start playing with metals, they start playing with cutting techniques, they start doing all this stuff to avoid detection, to avoid the punishments for crime, and to adapt to their surrounding environment. Ancient counterfeiters, they aimed to maximize economic gain by using minimal precious metals, and they still wanted to maintain a realistic appearance. And so this is a huge scientific process. These are people who are clearly professionals going out of their way to figure out just what needs to be done so that they will be able to make coins and to continue making coins. Remember, this isn't just a one-off thing. There's a balance. how many coins can they make, and just in what way can they make them so that they can continue doing this for as long of a period, so that their rewards that they reap, they are just as high. And so these counterfeiters were incredibly intelligent individuals, and you can see that it continues. Counterfeiting grows, and they were really reaping steady profits. And there's really a biological basis to this, right? Because this behavior can be explained by more than just finances. The biological approach suggests that our survival necessity, that's what drives our economic and social behaviors. Counterfeiters, these methods to avoid detection and to maximize profits, everything is done to ensure their longevity, to ensure the longevity of their family, to ensure the longevity of anyone they need to care for. So it's extremely interesting when you look at it from a genetic and biological anthropological perspective. And we will look at that later on. And so we have a lot of evidence and insight into this, because epigraphic and literary evidence, anything that's ever been written at some point mentioning crime, mentioning the fact that what's happening, we have a lot of ancient authors' sources. I won't be naming them here because I am not sure that it's necessary to continue the central thesis of the statement, but archaeological findings, they further corroborate all that was written in the literature, even if the literature didn't ever focus on them, because no one's going to try to focus on a criminal. The analysis that we have on counterfeit coins, it can provide useful insights into their production, into their usage, and into the societal perceptions that were going on. Because remember, who is writing something? When they write, somebody who is rich enough, somebody who is privileged enough to be sitting and writing and documenting, they are not going to be happy with the actions of a thief or a counterfeiter or a smuggler. It's going to be a very biased account, which is something I highly recommend you remember when you are reading any form of anthropological ethnography. Even though anthropologists try to be unbiased, it is never truly possible. And so these techniques were really, really interesting. And so the techniques employed in creating and identifying counterfeit coins are significant, as they directly influence their profitability and their prevalence in society. How many times do you see counterfeit coins? And the origins of the techniques for creating and detecting counterfeits can be traced back to Asia Minor, and they were extensively used in mainland Greece later on. And the earliest counterfeits involved wrapping precious metal foil around bases, and they just grew significantly more nuanced. They grew significantly more impressive. Eventually, we had people using hand-carved dies, mimicking the official seals. And it also really makes you question just who was involved in this, because who has the skill set to be producing something so impressive? And so when we look at evolving methods of counterfeiting, we see the way they change. There is one study, which if you're interested in, and you Google counterfeiting in ancient times, in ancient Greece, you will get his study. It's a thesis, and it's by Kohn, and I think it's from 2007. And what you see is that he analyzes how counterfeiting went down. Every metal change, every weight change. And you do see how incredibly important it was for those involved and for those hunting them. Because remember, the government does not like that this is going on. The government wants to stop it. So there is the fox and the prey relationship. Somebody is hunting them as well. And so as you see these methods evolving, you know that somebody has been tasked into finding them as well. And their methods grow incredibly detailed. Their methods grow incredibly impressive. So if you are interested, I do recommend reading the 2007 thesis by Kohn on counterfeiting methods, because he really does show the metals and the alloys and how that changes. And we talked about this a few moments ago, but the city mint, the mint is a facility where coins are produced under the authority of a government or another entity. And historically and in modern times, mints have been responsible for manufacturing currency, ensuring its authenticity, and maintaining its standards in weight, in purity, etc. And this makes you think, right? Because the city's mint is often considered one of the initial locations for a counterfeit operation. Who else is going to have the skill set, the knowledge to actually be producing these coins to make this work? Some suspect coins have direct connections to official releases. And that's huge. That says we have an official release, we can tie it in the modern day to what happened in the past, and it confirms that the counterfeiting was going on within the governmental authorities. And obviously, craftsmanship and tools in counterfeiting, they really do go hand in hand, because there's all these different types of craftsmanship, there's all these different tools needed. Who else is going to have them but somebody who is already either working for the government, or perhaps they're a metallurgy specialist, perhaps they work with metals in their day job, and they realize they are skilled enough to be able to continue this as a nighttime job. And there's a really interesting verification method, and it's called the touchstone. And the historical context for this, for those who like classical archaeology, is that in Lydia and Greece, and Lydia is what now we call Turkey, it's an ancient region, the touchstone method originated in Lydia, and it was later adopted by the Greeks. And it was one of the earliest locations that started producing coins. And the touchstone technique, so the material is this smooth, dark stone, and it's often basalt or schist. And it has this fine-grained surface, and it's suitable for testing precious metals. And the method is this: to use the touchstone, a metal object, such as a coin, is rubbed against the stone, and it leaves a streak. And the color and properties of the streak provide clues about the metal's composition. And if you compare the streak of a fake coin with the streak of a real coin, you will be able to tell which is which. And there's a huge significance to this, right? Because now there is proof to what is going on. And it was applied very frequently. And I think the sheer number of material evidence we have of touchstones is also proof that this was a growing problem. Now, King Aliatas of Lydia, he is the one who introduced the Lydia electrum lions, and that's a type of coin. It's one of the earliest coins issued, and it's recognized by its distinct design. And this is, the time period is 610 to 600 BCE. And they had different monetary values. Something that you should know, when counterfeiting is being done, you cannot, for example, if I were to start counterfeiting here, and I'm in Crete right now, and I decided to start counterfeiting 100 euros at a time, would this be a mistake? Yes, a huge mistake, because 100 will raise eyebrows. It will make people uncomfortable. But if I am counterfeiting a 10 euro note, no one's really going to bat an eye. They're not going to assume that 10 was worth my time. And the same thing happened here. And King Aliatas is the one who had to really introduce all this stuff with the touchstone, because he's the one who really brought in coins in the first place. It should be noted that despite the risks, counterfeiting continued, and in an admirable way, despite the fact that it was illegal, in an admirable way, it really does reflect the cleverness and the resourcefulness of these ancient people. And it really gives us an insight into the economic and social dynamics of the time. And I think the more we learn, the more we will be able to understand what was the hierarchy like then, who was prompted to be producing fake coins, because crime is punishable by death, especially counterfeiting, especially piracy, especially smuggling. So who in their right mind would think that my life is worth the risk? And what does this reveal about social hierarchies, both now and back then? So let's talk about smuggling. In 2018, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime published a study called the Global Study on Smuggling of Migrants. And it offered a comprehensive and very contemporary view on smuggling dynamics. And what's important here is, in the same way that modern counterfeiting can tell us about the past, modern smuggling can tell us about the past. And it can also tell us about the challenges ancient authors would have faced in the times that they were writing. Because if we now have difficulty in collecting specific data due to scarcity, due to the heterogeneous nature of many regions, what happened back then? And global research efforts were hindered by the clandestine nature, by how secretive everything is. So if now, with all of the spy technology in someone's phone, if the fact that I say I want a new pair of earrings, my phone instantly shows earrings trying to sell them to me. If with all the modern technology we now have a difficult time finding out information about smuggling. How difficult must it have been in the past? Something that I think you'll find interesting is the characteristics of modern smuggling routes, because that is, frankly, directly applied to what was going on back then. Now, in modern times, there's a utilization of diverse land and sea passages. There are multiple methods, and there are fraudulent official border crossings. These people operate in hazardous, uncontrollable areas through deceitful tactics, and they're at checkpoints trying to get through all the time. And sea smuggling requires territorial control. It requires incredible knowledge of departure points, and it requires an incredible level of adaptation. And again, if in modern day so much adaptation was necessary, if in modern day smugglers have this crucial need to avoid border control, they need to do multimodal transportation, they need to be able to ensure safe passage of their cargo, what else would have been happening back then but the same thing? The duration and methods of smuggling, influenced by organizational capabilities, by migrant resources, the environmental threats that they face now, they would have faced back then. Factors such as geographical location, such as border control, and local complicity also are a huge factor of smuggling hubs. And I'd like to take your attention to this for a moment. Local complicity, what does that mean? It means, is the surrounding environment helpful to you, or is it making your life more difficult? And this is a very, very important thing, because this is why smuggling hubs, and a hub is a location where something can thrive, right? These smuggling hubs develop, and they exist now and they existed then, and they serve as this stable meeting point for supply and demand in smuggling operations. They attract diverse actors, including smugglers, residents, and service providers who are essential for the continuity, for the continuation of their smuggling operations. And various roles are assumed by these people. There are going to be brokers, there are going to be coordinators, there are going to be leaders. And it's extremely interesting to realize that back then, they would have had just as much need for someone to be the leader, for someone to get people to come, for someone to get the cargo. It's a huge hierarchy that we are only just learning about, that we are only just discovering. And so this is operational dynamics. I think we just spoke about that. Role of smuggling hubs. Like I said, it's a place for the supply and the demand. And there are certain personalities which are associated with prosperous smugglers, with smugglers who are successful versus smugglers who aren't successful. And modern smugglers, they exhibit a wide range of profiles. And they range from independent operators to sophisticated organizations. They recruit clients through trust building. They adapt services based on the safety and perceived wealth of the migrants. We should also take a moment to appreciate that despite the fact that they weren't really written about, there were women in smuggling. Women played significant roles in smuggling operations. In modern day, at least, they are often overlooked, but they are there. They are often working independently or alongside intimate partners. And despite being less visible, their contributions are quite integral. And there's a huge relationship of adaptation and innovation because smugglers adapt strategies based on the destination countries, the destination they're going to, the destination they're leaving. They're constantly on alert for border control, because what is border control? It's what controls significant influence. It's with smugglers, smugglers are going to prefer to cross somewhere with limited controls, somewhere that's relaxed, somewhere that's easy. And so we have diverse smuggler profiles. I think we just mentioned that briefly. And we have ancient parallels. And so these ancient smugglers, they faced similar challenges, including the need to adapt strategies, including the need to navigate these complex locations and to evade the authorities. It's constant. Like, how do I get away with this job that I've started? How do I finish this job? How do I make the most money that I possibly can from this job? And we should also think about ethno-linguistic affinities. What does this mean? This means trust between smugglers and migrants. It's going to be enhanced by ethno-linguistic ties. If I speak the same language as you, you like me more. If I have a similar ethnic background to you and we are in a foreign place, you are going to be drawn to me. If we are both the only two English speakers on a remote island, you are going to form a bond with me. And so the people, what you can actually see in modern day smuggling studies is the more charming someone is, the more well-read they are, the more languages they speak, the more ties they can build with someone else, the more successful they are. And language has always been a commodity. Language has always been valuable. And you are going to see this in the past as well. It exists for a reason. And so the more diverse a smuggler was, the more they were able to reap the rewards of the crimes they were participating in. And so let's briefly touch on piracy. And ancient Greek and Latin, they both have significant writings about this. And even Homer, his works initially depict pirates neutrally, and then it gets a little negative. We should remember that the depiction of a certain group of individuals is often controlled by the media. Nowadays, we'll say it's the journalists, but back then we can say it's the government, it's whoever has the power to be releasing this information. And pirates are going to be motivated by wealth, by prestige, by power, but it's not going to be the only thing. They are going to play a huge role in naval warfare. They're going to play a huge role in the impact on maritime trade itself. And of course, there is a literature aspect to this. Nowadays, we think about pirates and we think about, oh, what a romantic concept, because the pirate on television is played by some beautiful actor. There's a really interesting report by a man called Richard R. Kanya, and he critiques the media's glorification of piracy. And he argues that it masks the brutality and the criminality inherent in pirate activities. And why this is important is because when we look at ancient authors, they were not in love with the trope of piracy. They were not in love with some television actor. So when they say that they are angry, when they say that this has been brutal, that this has been a huge detriment to society, at least to a certain degree, it is less biased than our interpretations right now. However, we should remember that the people who are writing are the ones who are privileged enough to disagree with criminal activities, because sometimes these people have no other choice. And we will touch on that later on when we talk about human behavioral ecology. And archaeology has yet to definitively identify ancient pirate societies, although there are recurring patterns which suggest anomalous settlements characterized by, for example, rapid accumulation of wealth. Somebody joins a pirate voyage, they come home with a significant amount of money, they don't want to repeat it, but they have accumulated this wealth in a far quicker period of time than they themselves would have been making had they continued living their regular life. And because we have tax information, we have income information, we can actually see these kinds of relationships going on. Now, motivation is a really interesting factor, because are people motivated by the desire for luxury? Because desire for luxury goods and high status items, they do drive underworld occupations now. They probably did back in the day. They definitely did back in the day, because we know some of the things that were stolen. When we're thinking about luxury, we are defining this as expensive, as something that is exclusive, and as something with cultural significance. What is luxurious here in Crete is not necessarily luxurious in Ecuador. And yet, does it make it any less luxurious? No, because it's a different societal, socio-demographic factor. It's a very different society. It's a very different interpretation of what is good. And there are actually some incredibly interesting writings on this. If you are interested in luxury and classical archaeological contents, there's a book, I believe, called Luxury and Wealth in Sparta and the Peloponnese. And it depicts all these different types of luxury. It depicts who could make a statue of themselves, or when marble was stolen, or when marble was imported, how the people who didn't care, it wasn't a luxury good, and you could see how the price was falling. And so for example, like I said, marble in Athens signifies luxury and social hierarchy, but marble where it comes from in the Peloponnese is just the local material. And there's a huge link between poverty and crime. And we can see this we have evidence for this consistently. Economic hardships and environmental factors are the ones who influence crime rate. There's a really interesting paper which delineates that climate variables can influence interpersonal violence. So the hotter it gets, actually, the more degrees the temperature goes up, the more likely crimes are to be committed, which is very, very interesting. So let's take a look at motivation and behavior for a moment. Human behavioral ecology explores how humans interact with their environments, and it's crucial in archaeological and sociocultural research to integrate insights from population biology, because humans, like other organisms, they adapt to diverse and sometimes challenging environments, and they are driven by both biological and cultural evolution. We cannot say something is only biology, but we cannot say something is only culture. They go together. So biological factors, physical traits such as stature, strength, they are going to significantly influence someone's criminal behavior. The ones who are strong enough to do something and get away with it are the ones who are going to do it. So each individual's genetic makeup contributes towards their unique predisposition towards criminality. And while physical attributes, they set parameters, they delineate what someone can do or cannot do, they do not dictate, they cannot truly be only responsible for behaviors. And when we look at sociocultural factors, sociocultural influences shape our beliefs, our values, our desires. Societal norms and the importance placed on material possession will be impacting our decision-making. They will be impacting our actions. Developmental factors are going to be huge. They're going to include physical, cognitive, emotional growth, and they're going to shape how we react, how an individual reacts to a certain stimuli. And childhood development and crime, it's going to go together because early life experiences, family dynamics, socioeconomic status, they're significantly going to influence criminal tendencies. And protective factors such as irrational temperament, educational opportunities, they will lessen the likelihood of criminal behavior. And so cultural transmission of criminal practices, they evolve over time in response to societal and environmental changes. Crime functions as a cultural trait shaped by dynamic interactions between individuals and their environments. Society's defensive response to crime, such as enhanced security measures, legal reforms, they illustrate the evolution of criminal tactics. We know this happened in the past. We know this happens now. And so if we think about applications to ancient contexts, ancient smugglers, these pirates, whoever they were, they exemplified adaptability and learned behaviors in response to economic pressures. And they did this for profit incentives because the profit was linked to the longevity and the quality of their life. And economic hardships and opportunities are what influenced the prevalence of criminal activities in ancient Greece. And I'm going to repeat that because I think it's extremely important to remember. It is hardship. It is the economic situation and the opportunities or lack thereof, which actually are going to have been responsible for this behavior in ancient Greece. So if a rich author says, everything is fine, they are doing this for no reason, but you have a significant amount of crime going on, they don't know. They just didn't have the insight into knowing that this was a problem, that this needed to be solved. And so let's take a look at ethnography, because the way I research things is through ethnography. And I think it's a really beautiful and very underutilized way of researching archaeology. Ethnography plays a pivotal role across disciplines like criminology, for example, archaeology, as I just mentioned, because it provides this insight through extended observational and participatory practices. And the advent of archaeological ethnography, it marks a shift. We should not just be material evidence. We cannot only look at pottery for the rest of our lives. We need to look at temporally diverse situations, at different political situations, and we need to engage all these interdisciplinary methods into studying historical artifacts and historical times. Ethnography fosters critical introspection. It's a relationship. It facilitates collaborative efforts around diverse audiences, and it makes it a very powerful methodological tool. And when we want to understand a social dynamic, we need to look at it. We cannot pretend that it's beneath, it's sociocultural. We are biological anthropologists, we are archaeologists, we are material scientists. No, we need to look at what's going on. We need to look at the human element. There's an incredibly interesting case study on hackers, which I used to understand crime in ancient times. And it showed me this new world. It shows how hackers often view themselves as positive deviants, avoiding shame and embracing their identity as rule breakers, how their innovation in technology have significantly impacted society. Similar to how ancient criminals might have influenced historical developments through specialized knowledge, through their specialized skill set. We discussed a moment ago how there is Kanye. He writes about how awful it is that we have romanticized piracy, but have we not romanticized hackers as well? Of course we have. And in what degree are these hackers so happy and so in love with what they do that we can't think, wait, But if pirates back then had some kind of cool personality attached to them, would that not change how they interacted with their job? Would that take it just from profit to profit and an emotional aspect of it? And so there is a lot more to everything than we know. And I really just don't have the time to go into all of their responses on a deeper level, just because that is a paper of 40 pages and this is a lecture of half an hour. I also used something called, it was an ethnographic study from a woman who graduated Oxford. It was her PhD dissertation, and it was on the Kanjar community in India. And it showed this thieves guild that we only see in video games, that we only see in fantasy worlds. It shows that it exists in India, and it's this organized system of criminal activity, and that they have rules and rites of passages, and that there was this completely different moral code that was attached to them. And it underscores the complexity of societal integration, the negotiation of power dynamics. And they are, after all, a marginalized community, the Kanjar community. It's not considered some elite community, but they are known as the thieves. And so seeing how India treats them, seeing how they treat themselves, does provide further insight, even if it's in a completely different time, even if it's in a completely different location. It gives us a clue, which is all we can really do, because we are archaeologists. We will never know for 100% something, but we can look for implications. We can look for what we can gather. So implications for ancient Mediterranean, for implications for the ancient Mediterranean. So if we draw parallels between the Kanjar community's organizational structure and the ancient Mediterranean's criminal guilds, we have so many different possibilities. We have patronage systems that may have existed. We have social rules. We have perceptions. The Kanjar community, they employed theft as a means of negotiating social hierarchies and economic survival. And ancient criminals in the Mediterranean might have operated under very similar frameworks. These guilds that they could have provided not only economic opportunities, but social cohesion and protection within a society where legal and social norms were always changing and always challenged. So exploring these ethnographic parallels offers a much richer understanding than what we can possibly have by looking only at material evidence or only at a literary source. And so just to conclude, we've discussed how ethnography is valuable. This lecture attempted to bridge a number of different criminal activities, a number of different historical epochs, and geographical regions by analyzing them through approaches including, but not limited to, classical archaeology, anthropology, criminal sociology, human behavioral ecology, and political economics. It's my genuine belief that there is no one answer to anything, but there are a number of answers which can occur all at once. When attempting nuanced interpretations of criminal activities and their many impacts on society, and especially when attempting to apply another perspective in identifying the lives of many actors involved, it is paramount to provide behavioral operations, to provide agency for the historical figures involved. And I think the most important thing is to provide the resources for future readers to better the publication if they see fit. I have no problem if somebody takes my publication and changes it 3 years from now. I would be more than happy to read their interpretation of it. Modern ethnographic materials and historical accounts, they make for beautiful supplementation, although they will never tell us exactly what happened. But the humanities are not an exact field, and this is a blessing that allows for interdisciplinary analysis to occur in the first place. Laws and cultural norms, they play significant roles in shaping the lifestyles of those who fall in the criminal underworld. and they serve as a reminder of the transient nature of society, the hierarchical nature of the past. It never disappeared, and it can be seen in everything we do. And in the case of this publication, it is to our advantage because it allows us to better understand the many forms and functions of the ancient world and the people who came before us. That is what I have for you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Karina, for your presentation. The details that you mentioned were really fascinating. Agradecemos a Karina por su intervención. To all the people that is watching the video. A continuación, podemos ver las preguntas que han realizado algunas de las personas en el chat y leeremos algunas.
Hello. Hi, Karina. Hi, Ariane. I will start reading some of the questions that people in the audience have given us. The first one is, how are counterfeit coins from classical Greece identified in an archaeological context?
So because we have real coins and they have certain weights, they have certain sizes, mistakes were very, very easy to make, even if they were not always easy to tell. And like I said, the touchstone, which is the tool you use to check if a material is made of a pure substance, that's actually the first giveaway. Is it a pure substance or is it a fake?
Thank you. We have another question. It says, the similarities that allow for these sociocultural comparisons, could it be that they are due to the fact that current states are based on this Greek civilization as a cradle of city-states?
Honestly, I think it's possible to be based on anything and everything. I think the reason why so many different subjects come together, it's because there is no one right answer. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's another one that says, given that criminal activities are similar and are represented in the ethnoarchaeological evidence, what challenges do ethnoarchaeologists face when attempting to compare ancient crime with contemporary crime?
I think it's more what is transient, what can be associated, because I think the real challenge is interpretation. Does what I say or what I think about the past match what is even going on in the modern world? It's not difficult, but it's not difficult to say, you know, a book in the past was a book today is a book in the past. I don't know how to quite answer it. It's more, I really don't know how to answer your question. It's really more interpretation, the fault of the anthropologist. That's the difficult part.
Well, we are waiting to see if there are more questions. There are some things that I wanted to add. First of all, I really like that you mentioned the aspect of the role of women in counterfeiting, because it's true that generally in history, we tend to like blur, if anything, the role that women have taken part into doing so many things, right? And we tend to see like women are just staying in the house, just taking care of the kids, or their families, or cooking, or like cleaning.
Even now in the modern analysis,
Yes.
they were used as intimate partner. That was the section. So
Yes, but actually, it's very interesting, and it's something that I don't know, of course, to which extent it has been analyzed, but at the same time, like you said, nowadays we see so many women that are enrolled criminal activity, even in Ecuador, in other countries of South America, other parts of the world as well. And they take they have a central role on it sometimes. Even like drug dealers, like this series that was in Netflix, I think it's Griselda or something, like we may be more aware now, but that doesn't mean that it didn't existed in the past. So that was one interesting thing. Another one that I really like was when you mentioned how
mediodía en punto.
How skilled these people were to do these coins, for example, or trying to do all the counterfeiting, because of course it's a process. It involves a process of learning, you know, like and trying and making mistakes and then trying again until you finally make it look as similar as possible. But I was thinking about the context in Ecuador too, because we have many artisans who are very skilled into creating ceramics that look exactly the same as the ones in the past. And sometimes it can even for us archaeologists be tricky to identify which one is modern and which one was ancient, right? And nowadays we have user skills of these artisans more to teach people how to do ceramics, to get them more involved into archaeology, to appreciate the whole like process of doing this kind of work. And it has helped us, I guess, in our field. But it's very interesting, like you said. And I have so many things to say. I was just taking notes because it was very fascinating. For example, the aspect about the strategies and the languages, like nowadays, of course, we can think that the more languages we learn, we can travel to other countries, we can study abroad, we can, you know, work in other countries too. But we don't think that much about how these people in the past learn these things, like learn other languages in order to be able to have like a wider market in which they can you know, exchange these things that are counterfeited. So it was truly fascinating. And I don't know if anyone else in the audience would like to talk, so that it's just not me. But if not, oh, I have another question. It says it's from a colleague. He says, what archaeological proxies do you use for economic hardship in ancient Greece?
What proxies do I use for hardship? Honestly, honestly, can you reshape the question more specifically? Or is it like is it a general question or is it like a more specific?
It just says that it's from a colleague who is also an archaeologist, and we will wait to see if he can rephrase the question.
What economical proxy do I use? I mean, we typically,
hardship.
Yeah, let's see, what did I use in this paper? For example, it's mostly just those who, we looked at social stratification, we looked at financial status, we looked at things that they were going for. I think maybe this is correctly answering their question, maybe it's not, but something that I think is very important to look at is what is the profit coming for? You know, we talked about luxury, but is it just for something? Because if I am comfortable, if I have a place to sleep, if I have food to eat, am I stealing? Am I just going to be stealing food all the time? No, I'm going to be stealing something more on the social hierarchy, more developed. So if I'm looking at we have very little information about these people to begin with. So really, all of the actual hard research that I use is done modern day. So I cannot explain it in an archaeological past. I'm trying to think of I don't know. I really don't know how to answer this person's question.
Yeah, the thing that this person added is for example, if you use diet, if you could use diet.
I haven't used it, but it would be phenomenal to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was because there are really not enough papers on it. This one was just like breaking into the fact that it existed. It was like because we have people who look at different areas, right? We have someone who studies piracy, we have someone who studies smuggling, but to look at all of it in general and to say what is another perspective that this can give us about the sociocultural aspect, we really didn't have that. So in the future, I would be more than happy to use diet, to use the luxury goods they were going for as a representation, but in this paper, no.
Even illnesses, right? To see the stress that people have been having throughout their lives, seeing in some stress markers in the bones. We could also use that.
We could.
Yeah, it will be very interesting. Well, it seems like we ran out of questions. Thank you so much, Carina, for taking our invitation. It was such a pleasure to hear you talk about this with such passion and knowledge.
Thank you so much.
So, of course, we're looking forward to have you again at some point. And thank you, Ariane, also for your help in organizing this conference. I hope people really like it. That's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carina, for all. Also, I want to say that your work is really important, not only for archaeologists to understand better the past, but also for society to understand how this past is built to us, and also how this is useful to understand the present time, the modern society. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much. It's very kind. Thank you so much.
Y ya que no existen más preguntas, nosotros, en nombre de los docentes en la carrera de Arqueología, el Club y la Facultad de Ciencias Sociales Humanísticas, agradecemos a todos quienes nos han acompañado, participado en lo que es esta transmisión. Y por supuesto, Carina, muchas gracias, obviamente, por haber aceptado nuestra invitación, compartir tu tiempo. Thanks so much for your time, for accepting this invitation. Nos veremos en una próxima ocasión. Muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí y que tengan una buena tarde.
Gracias.